Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Icing on the Career Cake, which we haven't done one of these for a while, have we, Diane? We've been incredibly busy. It's been the school holidays. We'll use that as the excuse. We have Vernon here, who is the singer of the DCT Recruitment song. Isn't that right, Vernon?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I don't know if you want me to go into detail or if Diane wants to talk about what happened.
Yeah, I think we need that story as the beginning of all of this because it's, that'd be nice to hear. So go on, tell us, Vernon, how did Diane approach you about the song, or did you approach her?
Basically, we were at a networking event, and I happened to have booked a table on this occasion rather than just going along as a punter and a client. I had a table where I was just trying to promote what I do, and as is my wont, I just love interacting live. And I just took my guitar out onto the terrace, and Diane's stand was one of the stands out there, and I just started playing. I just make stuff up on the hoof on the spot, and so I just started singing this song about DCT recruitment. I was looking at the banner and taking some cues from that, and just making some stuff up on the spot on the fly. And it was just one of those moments, magical moments, which you don't get when you don't have live music. So for me, it was great. It was magical. Basically, I was promoting obviously Diane's brand. I went to one or two other stands and did similar thing as well. It made them laugh. I laughed. And also those kind of things, sometimes those moments that get captured, because I think Diane captured it on a phone. Sometimes is the kind of thing you can just put out occasionally as social media type stuff that says, this is our brand. We're about fun. We're serious about what we do. We do a great job, but also we have fun. So that was my take on it. Anyway, I don't know what your take on it was, Diane.
Yeah, go on.
To expand on that, I then asked Vernon, because we were having our second birthday bash the next day at the Malmaison. So we already had a singer booked in who was great as well. And I just asked Vernon, did he want to come along? And while the singer was on a break, he could continue a little bit of the songs. And I had some helpers giving out things for us. So some of my family and people that work for us. So they gave you CDs out and your business cards and stuff, didn't they, to try and promote you with our
they
stuff.
did.
So then we had everybody dancing to DCT recruitment while the sun was shining the Malmaison.
Oh, I think that's
the
wonderful.
Whole event was perfect, wasn't it? So yeah, I thank you very much
for
that.
Event, yeah.
So then we then said come on the podcast and talk about how music's good for the soul, makes people happy, helps your brand, and the power of network really. If that's what we're here to do, is try and help increase your brand along with our own, by doing the podcast and giving people insights to different things of life, because we probably talk about all topics, don't we, Graham? Everything's not always just about recruitment. It's just life and enjoying what it is. So
absolutely, no, absolutely. We do talk about all sorts, but ultimately, what we talk about is people's journey.
Okay,
and how they get to where they are now, why they're doing what they're doing, the kind of passionate side behind any entrepreneur of any description. Really, is why did they take up doing what they're doing? So you're no exception. And of course, I'm kind of a fay with talking to musicians anyway. Having now interviewed nearly 500 of them. So, well, in my time, it's a lot more than that, actually. Gosh,
yeah.
I can't even think about how many musicians I've talked to over the years. So, what made you start music?
I've just loved music. I mean, when I was a youngster, I'm effectively, in some ways, in terms of day job, whatever that might be, and we might touch on that a bit. I'm semi-retired, so now I'm doing a lot more with my music, as well as I deliver mental health courses as well. I'm a mental health first aider, and I'm a member of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders, and I deliver a confidence course. But right from the bat, when I grew up in kind of West London, Hammersmith, Shepherd's Bush. So I loved music. I grew up in the era of afros. So I used to have a massive afro, and I was very vain about it as well. I mean, I was really vain.
Yeah.
So I used to wear platform shoes, big flares, big afro. My other half, she thought I was about 7 foot tall because I used to have these platform shoes. So I grew up with all the kind of soul stuff, the funky stuff. But then I also got into jazz and I started playing guitar. One of my strap lines is that when I was young, I looked like Jimi Hendrix, but I couldn't play guitar. Now I look nothing like Jimi Hendrix, but I can play guitar. So that was kind of my journey. I used to go out dancing, doing, lots of clubbing kind of stuff. But I also had some bands where we had a really good horn section. And I wrote a lot of the music and did some arrangements. We used to kind of gig around London. And some of my contemporaries, for example, are people like Paul Cook, drummer with the Sex Pistols, who I'm still in contact with. We were in the same class through school. We were in the same year as Steve Jones, the guitarist from Sex Pistols. I used to play football with the bass player from Culture Club, Mike Craig. We used to hang out. I was probably more friends with his brother, his older brother, Greg, who had a band called Funkapolitan, which kind of made a bit of noise in the London scene, especially when you remember when there was roller discos, or whether if you heard about them or read about them, because you might be too young, of course. Roller discos, so they used to play that kind of stuff. And I also used to hang out with a band. I don't know if you heard of a band called Candidate, with a K. So they had a bit of chart success. They were on Top of the Pops, very very kind of poppy, soul-y kind of stuff. But the real stuff that didn't make it, to the charts, they were such good musicians. I used to go and hang out with them, and when you sort of think, oh, I'd love to be in this band, but they already had all their band members. But they were really, really good songwriters, isn't it? So it all came from that, really. So I was offered a deal by Eddie Grant, so Rudolph Grant, his kind of relation. But because I already had mortgage and young family, I didn't have the guts to jump, and do that with the band, which I don't particularly regret, because it was the right thing to do to look after the family and that. But that was my journey. I've always loved music, and so it's always been alongside whatever else I've done, and I'm doing a lot more of it now, especially in the Northwest.
Yeah, a lot of those deals back then weren't great either. For the
Exactly.
artist. Yeah, not great at all. Having had a record contract thrust in my hand when I was 21, and then we got it stuck in the solicitors for about a year and a half, while we all decided that we hated each other. It just it kind of took the shine off of it a little bit. But yeah, that a lot of the offers back then were pretty poor for the band, and very very good for the record company. So yeah, the job that paid the mortgage was probably a better deal, and
Absolutely.
probably
So maybe it has a look.
Yeah. And any regrets looking back in terms of, I perhaps should have done this more, or do you just think, well, actually, what will be, and actually, I just enjoy playing music, and it's
I don't know if it's a regret, but I think perhaps I should have believed in myself more in terms of promoting my songs. The songs that I wrote. So that's probably the only area that I think I could have been more proactive with, been a bit more assertive, a bit more sort of like, no, some of these songs are good, and I should have pushed them a bit more. So that's probably the only thing. I mean, it doesn't sort of like weigh me down or anything, but it is certainly something that, I mean, even now, my wife, she says, did you play any of your songs in the gig? No, I did maybe one. Why don't you play more of your songs? So that's still there, even though I'm quite confident in all sorts of other ways. It's that putting yourself out there, making yourself vulnerable, I suppose, and actually really believing in what you've written. So from that point of view, but that's probably the only thing. But the great thing, I've had a great time, gigging in the Midlands. I used to gig with a band that had one of the drummers from two-tone bands, so that was great. We used to rehearse in London in the same space, not in the same actual room, but in the same rehearsal studios as Motorhead. So it was great to get to know Lemmy a bit, mad, but really down to earth, really friendly, so those kind of memories that you have are fantastic. And then Northwest has been really good to me. I do solo and duo stuff now. I do stuff with an Italian guy, guitarist, monster player, went to Leeds College of Music. He's a great musician, but we're great mates as well. So we call ourselves Twin Frets. Not very original, but we also call ourselves Twin Forks because we love to combine our gigs with curries whenever we can. so we are curry fiends. So we're playing at a guitar show in up in Thirsk in November. So we're going to try and combine that with a curry eat as well.
And the great thing is, do a good curry? Do they?
Sorry, I have no idea, but I'm sure we'll find somewhere. But we met at a guitar show, probably about 20 plus years ago. I was demoing some jazz guitars for a luthier, and as a result of doing that, I could get a guitar, one of his guitars, handmade guitars, half price. And I was playing, and this guy comes up and says, should we jam? And we jammed. Out of that, it's like, oh, this is really good. And we just kind of like clicked and gelled, and we've done loads of gigs ever since. Brilliant, really good fun.
Now, Thirsk is where the Yorkshire Vet's from. So
yeah,
I want to see you take your guitar up there and see whether you can segue yourself into a Yorkshire Vet episode, I think. With maybe a theme song, an alternative theme song for the Yorkshire Vet. That'd be good.
That would be good. Yeah, they probably won't be filming at the time that we're there. So.
Well, you never know, do you? You never know. I mean, it's definitely everything's worth a try.
Oh. Absolutely.
Curry and music sounds messy. Sounds very, very messy indeed.
Yeah, not at the same time, of course.
Oh no. Well, I'm pleased. I'm definitely pleased to hear that. Do you think it's quite different for musicians these days? I think it is. I think that the older generation of musician that grew up, trying to play music and whatever, a lot of it was around friendship. A lot of it was around the cultural groups that you kind of associated with. It was kind of like, it was part of your society, if you like.
Yes.
It was very much attached to that. And, for a lot of youngsters these days, they seem to be so much more focused on the business side, but they get taught the business side. You can go now and learn how to do this stuff, properly. Mm-hmm. Which I don't think a lot of musicians from a particular era did. They just fumbled along and found out as they went along. Don't do it that way. Do it this way. Made all of the mistakes. And I kind of bring both of you in on this. I think there's pros and cons to both. In a way, there's pros to actually learning to do something properly, but I think there's something nice about kind of making mistakes and learning on the journey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Diane wants to say something first before I jump in.
Go on, Finn.
Okay, I mean, one of my roles historically, I used to be a credit manager for American multinationals. That was trade credit, not consumer credit. So I was a graduate member of the Chartered Institute of Credit Management. So I did all their exams and that's what I did as my kind of bread and butter income for many years. And then I switched codes and became a debt advisor with Citizens Advice and also a financial educator. So the kind of stuff that Martin Lewis does. money saving expert. So, you know, I was doing that around about the time when he was starting up and only people in the industry knew about him. And of course, as part of that, I would go into, not only would I go to county court and try and be a lay advocate for people who had debt problems, sometimes I would go along and try and, you know, so advocate for them so they didn't lose the roof over their heads because of some secured debt that they had on the property that they were living in. But one of the things I also used to do was go into schools, community groups, housing associations, and I also set up for a short space of time my community interest company that delivered. We've lost Graham, have we? That delivered you know, financial education, but I combined it with the arts. So it was an organization that I called Money Art. So basically I'd go along, a company would get funding from wherever. So Bernardo's was one of the organizations I worked with for young carers. They would get some funding. I would go along and deliver a kind of a workshop on money management, cost of credit, debt awareness, all those kind of things. And then I would get them into groups to create a piece of work. Might be a drama sketch, might be a poem, might be a rap, might be a poster, might be a game. So they could evidence their learning, express what they'd learned in an artistic form. And also it began to remove some of the boredom out of delivering a subject that a lot of people weren't really interested in.
Yeah,
I think it's much more topical now, obviously, with what all that's happened in terms of the money being tight, etc. But of course, then it was very difficult to sell the concept. I remember doing one, and there was a young guy. He was a parent that come along with his other half. And in the break, he, I said, what do you think? And he said, well, I thought it was going to be boring, with some bloke in a suit talking down at me, but this is all right. And that for me, that was a bit of a success. That was like, okay, I'm engaging at some level, and they're getting something out of it. And of course, some people would say, come on, benefits. My budget is to the bone. What can anyone tell me? What can anyone do to help me? Which is a very, very valid question, isn't it? And I would say to them, well, sometimes there's a bit of money here, or a trust fund, or a grant, or benefits you're not aware of. That if you do a benefit check at Citizens Advice or similar, it might change your financial situation for the better. And that so that was all rewarding. And I suppose the point of saying that in terms of musicians, I'd go into vocational college courses, talk to hairdressers, hair and beauty, construction, whatever. And for example, hair and beauty, I'd say, okay, so what's your target market? Are you going to work on a cruise ship? Or are you going to go mobile? Are you going to try and have a shop? And then I would say, how many in this room are going to be like, have their own premises or go mobile? Say it was just literally in the St. Helens area. I'd say, that's quite a small area. Okay, so what are you going to charge? What are you going to charge for your services? How are you going to beat the competition? If you undercut the competition too much, so you beat them on price, how are you going to pay your bills? Have you costed that? So it's all those kind of things you were talking about. The same for musicians, because I represent Musicians Union at guitar fairs, guitar shows, and we, I talk to kind of young people and perhaps mum or dad that come along with their son or daughter, and I say, oh, you could join for £1 for 6 months, or you could join as a student, or you could join blah blah blah, and these are the benefits you get. And also you learn, because not everyone goes to a music school or college course to learn about the business. Some don't, and it really just helps them to think about the holistic part of business. And it's the kind of thing I think that obviously you would touch on, Diane, as well, in terms of recruitment, when when you're recruiting people, and when you're finding out about them, you're also helping them to think about these other things as well. That's the whole package, because it's not just, it is about whatever job they're looking for, whatever career they're looking for, what salary, what's the other benefits of having working in that.
Yeah.
But it's also helping them to think through, you know, what the whole thing in terms of their finances. Hope that kind of explains.
100%. I've literally just been to the client meeting then, and they've struggled to get, like, they need a HR/payroll, and I was like, what is it you're struggling with, you know? And he was like, you know, they haven't got Excel experience, blah blah, or whatever. That's, and I was like, but what, you know, what else? I said, so what's your 5 key questions that you would ask someone in an interview? And I would ask them before I even send the CV to you, because if they can't answer that, then that's not going to be beneficial to you. It's not preparing the candidate for the interview, because you can change them questions when you come to the interview. But it's getting to that thing. It's also then being at the establishment. So it was on a construction site. So HR payroll, someone wanting to be in an office and, you know, looking out at the River Mersey, something that's not what they're going to get. So that's definitely, you know, I pride myself on going to as many clients I physically can to see the environment. And we probably discussed this quite a lot, don't we, Graham, is the skill set on a CV. Yeah, you can have 2 CVs, very similar skill sets. However, it's the individual who will fit to that company. And that comes down to the company's values and the person's values. And then the things that aren't really monetary, you know, like what's important to you could be, I like my dinner break, so I want an hour dinner. Or, you know what, I prefer to have flexible working, and I prefer to work through my dinner and go home half an hour earlier, because I'll beat the traffic and I get home for the kids, for tea, whatever. There's, you know, you've got to have that whole conversation with a candidate to find out what's important to them. Because if you know the client isn't going to budge on them, some of them things, there's just no point wasting anybody's time. So you're 100% right. The whole holistic view of a job has to be probably potentially, I feel, because I didn't do recruitment from the beginning. I wasn't homegrown recruitment because I worked for McDonald's for 22 years. That because of that, I probably ask a lot more questions. One for my
absolutely
of the job, so I can explain it better and get a grip of the job, but also because I haven't come through in other people's ways, and I've designed my own way. Does that make sense? I just feel like the more questions I ask, it eradicates everybody's time and energy. There's no point just sending 20 CVs across to the client. They might as well have just advertised it themselves. You know, my job, in my opinion, is to dig into the detail of them things, and that's 100% what we sell at DCT as a business, where we go that extra mile to dig into that, because otherwise you're just going to put someone in a role and they'll leave in a few months or weeks or whatever. Does that make sense? Because it could be something like really minuscule. Like, you know, we've had a job where, like, I've gone to offices and they got office dogs, and it's like, I'm allergic to dogs personally, so I maybe wouldn't want that, you know. However, the world loves dogs, so somebody might feel quite silly to say, do you know what, I just don't want to stay because they've got an office dog. Does that make sense? Whereas by
absolutely,
by going or asking that question, have you got a dog or this, or you can pre-warn people. So if you say, look, they've got an office dog, are you okay with that? They'd be like, well, no, that's not for me then. And that sounds quite simple, but something that would quite easily be missed out. And then somebody would leave further down the line and they'd be thinking, well, why? Like, what was it? It all seemed perfect. But you're definitely right. You've got to dig into the detail of anything, you know, and get people thinking a little bit. We do something similar as well. We go into schools.
Oh, we've lost her for a minute.
You know, it's even... Sorry, the phone rang. So we go into schools at the minute, and we're like working with junior schools, primary schools, so not even before they get to seniors, and talking to the children about different avenues, you know, like, you know, there's such a lack of trades in the industry. So we do a lot of construction recruitment. So we're talking about, you know, should enjoy like electrical stuff, or do you enjoy making things, or do you enjoy that? Because not everybody's destined for university, you know, and I think you need to capture that. And the same as what you're saying, try and do it in a fun way, do some activities, do different things just to get the brain ticking a little bit, you know, talking about like the marine sector and logistics and stuff like that, because, you know, we've been in a shortage in them areas for a long time anyway, but it's going to get worse and worse now. Computers and, you know, music like yourself, you know, everyone's being an influencer, or computers or musicians. It's just going to get harder and harder to fill the everyday roles that we need, you know, to function in life.
That's so good, because I mean, what you're saying there is, I mean, obviously because you go the extra mile and because you've been an employee and a manager and what have you, as you say, in McDonald's and that, what you're doing, and I'm telling you what you already know, and that is that the potential employers build trust with you, because they know that you're not just sending them whoever or whatever. It's a bit like, I suppose, if I liken it to music, if I think about agencies, music agencies, or people that try and get you gigs, there are some that will, you know, put you forward for all sorts of things, and it's like, I'm just not right for that. You know, they want whatever they want, whether it might be an Ed Sheeran tribute, or not that I could be a Taylor Swift tribute anyway, but you know,
I'd like to see that though. I would love to see that.
Yeah, moving swiftly on. But what happens? You know, an agency that does that loses credibility. Because the artist turns up and they go, blah blah blah, and you go, sorry, that's not what I do. That's not who I am.
That's completely the same. But that's the same for us. Like, so, for instance, a joiner, like my site manager go, why'd you ask me the ins and outs? I go, because certain joiners don't want to do certain aspects of joinery. They might be a joiner, but there's so many different aspects. So I will be like, well, what did you do? And what's this? What's that?
Good.
And then I can explain it to the joiner. So, for instance, we were on the Port of Liverpool building, just taking the old windows out. They were getting new panes through, putting it. It's very repetitive, boring, but, you know, to put on a CV, I've worked in a grade list of builds, and if this would be good for the joiner. However, do they want that monotonous job? Because it's going to be for a long time doing it. So you explain it. They've got the full understanding of the role before they go into it. Or it could be, you know, you've got to do fire doors, you've got to do first, second fix and fire doors. Some don't like to do fire doors. They're like, oh, it's not really my bag. Or you don't want to do the trestles on the roof because they don't really like height. So what happens is, so many times is, I just be like, oh, can I have a joiner? How long? Yeah, this. Okay, bang. And some people, in my experience working with other people prior to opening DCT, they didn't ask enough questions, you know, to understand the job role.
And ask the right questions as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then they just send a joiner, and then they do exactly that. Oh, no, I didn't do fire doors. And they're off the site, and then the site manager's upset, you know, and it just, you know, just take time a little bit, you know, just have a proper conversation about it, you know, and I put it together, right? Yeah, definitely.
You've also touched on something which I think is a problem with our society, and you know, the skills gap you mentioned. It's because we generally in Britain and the UK devalue certain occupations, and elevate others, when in reality, as we all know, we need them all. You know, I mean, if obviously I'll use music as an example, but obviously the amount of investment in music education has just got less and less and less and less, because it's not valued. And yet when you look at all the research from Musicians Union, from Help Musicians UK, from Music Venue Trust, etc., the generation of income that comes as a result of music, of the arts, of creativity, and all the peripheral other side kind of industries that relate to that, And it's the same when you talk about, as you say, about all the kind of trades, the sort of hands-on trades that used to be apprenticeships or whatever you might call it. And we have this psyche in certain parts of our society that says this particular role, whatever it might be, is better than that role, you know. And so it creates an atmosphere for some people that they look down their nose at certain vocations, you know. But if you think about it, I mean, if somebody asked me to play, some jazz and some soul and what have you, that's my skill set. If they want to talk about credit and finance, that's my skill set. Helping someone with their self-esteem and self-confidence, that's my skill set and experience. You ask me to do some of the construction stuff and what have you, it's a disaster. and so if we tap into people that are passionate about what they do, and like you are saying, also the nuances of that, in terms of the ones that are joiner but they will only do X sort of work, that really makes such a difference, doesn't it? It really does. I love what you're saying, because I totally agree with
something that, like, where I'm looking at partnership, and as well as apprenticeships for them trades is quite hard to find. So I'm trying to work that we can become the middleman of that apprenticeship. So we talk to the college, and the client just speaks to us, because the client's like, oh, we just want one direct route. And then if we can do that, and then using my experience from McDonald's of all the leadership training and all that I've done, because I was in head office for 4 years, I then want to, like, teach them different values. So going back to what you were saying before about the finances, that would be really good to add in, like teaching them how to manage the finance from day one. What, sort of teaching them a P&L, so to speak, but a budget of their own money. Like, why it's important to communicate that you're not going to be in work today. What's the reason for that? You need to give us, conversation. You can't just not turn up and expect to come back the next day. All little things that you just see that it'll take people day to day. But some of it's because, maybe they just didn't really like school. They didn't follow the process in school. So people struggle to follow procedures because maybe they're on, the spectrum or something like that, whatever, but they're really good practical. So
exactly,
it's teaching them that stuff. And also, like we've done, haven't we, about the accidental manager before, Graham? It's if I could teach people that, like, how to manage conflicts, how to communicate effectively, how to, lead properly from an early age within an apprenticeship program, just add it in, you know what I mean, yourself a little bit, then the amount of I'm fixing my own problem of trying to find people for my clients. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely,
you're going to grow them trades people yourself, and then hopefully they're going to become your site managers and so on and so forth, your project man, and it gets them on the right trajectory from an early age. Does that make sense? So that's the vision, of where we want to take DCT recruitment, and I've got a business plan to speak. So
it's a really interesting conversation, and that kind of divide between, those people that are making too much money, and taking too much control, and those at the other end, is a real problem. Is a real problem in society. I mean, we kind of talking about music. Let's bring it back to music. We've kind of seen that in abundance in the news in the last week or so, with a certain band who have got back together, and various sites that are crashing and whatever, and people paying ridiculous amounts of money for tickets. But if the unfairness in that, like everything, if it was then readdressed by some of that money then being filtered down, some of the skills being filtered down, etc., would make it much more palatable for everybody. It's when it doesn't, that's when it's a problem. I mean, ultimately, I think it was a group of people that are campaigning around sort of the small venues for musicians were trying to say, well,
music venue trust,
music venue trust, that a percentage of what comes out of the bigger venues and these bigger concerts, whatever, needs to start going back down to grassroots level, music venues, because if not, you won't have the musicians playing there in the future, because they all cut their teeth at the lower level in these clubs, etc. So it's all one part of the same conversation, really, which is that, as you say, we have to create better parity of resource and existence across the board within society, and we've all got too greedy.
Yeah. I mean, it was last year. I went to delegate conference for Musicians Union, and they asked some of us to just do some, short interviews about what it means to be a committee member and a Musicians Union member. And they released them last week on TikTok and what have you. And what I said, one of the things I said was, apart from obviously what the MU does, campaigns for the rights of musicians, creatives, etc., and works in cooperation and partnership with other organisations who have a similar agenda and passion and reason for being. But one of the things I said is that whilst we love what we do, like everybody else, we've got bills to pay. And so that the idea that, oh, you love what you do, so a couple of pints or a meal or something, or some sort of like tip your hat to you in some way is going to pay the bills. It's like, well, you don't say that to electricians, plumbers, builders, etc. And we know this, we know the narrative, we know the story, and it's actually changing that perception that says musicians are professionals too, which obviously I'm very passionate about, but it's also saying that plumbers, electricians, builders, construction workers, hair and beauty, what you insert, whatever the title is, if they're good at what they do, if they have integrity, if they're trustworthy, they're all worthy occupations, aren't they, and vocations. And the issue that we have in our society is that there's this kind of hierarchy that's created that says, ooh, you want to do that job, as opposed to that job, whatever, and you insert whatever that is.
Going to that's where some businesses don't have job titles because they don't want a hierarchy. It's like that's where different generations now, things are becoming different and going back to what's important. It's stuff like that. They're big questions that you need to ask. To someone, a title means everything to them. They want that title and they feel like that, because, they're the managing director, then they have this, they have that, they have the other, whatever. Whereas other people's like, I don't need a title to just to do my job, and I'm just going to do what I do, and I need to that. And I think in some organisations and some aspects, you need a hierarchy level. You do need someone at the end of the chain to make a decision, because sometimes you can be in a situation where nobody's making a decision, so nothing moves forward, nothing happens. However, I think I would say, me personally, maybe like why I was always successful running stores, and even now, is I will get my hands dirty and do every part of the job, every aspect of the role, regardless of what my position is. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Because I think if you do that, you keep in with what is real within the business and what's going on, and you can jump in and help if there's any sickness or whatever. But having that shadow of a leader and working shoulder to shoulder with someone and taking them through the process and showcasing you can do all that skill, I think people buy into it as well then. And it doesn't feel like there's a hierarchy. Does that make sense? Because you're doing their job just as much as they are, and so on and so forth. And I think it allows you to empower them then to feel like they can step up and do something within their remit. Does that make sense? That
It
in
does,
the end,
yeah.
you don't have to do then. So you know, you're like, right, that's your job now. Well done.
It's double-edged, isn't it? Because you can ask the right questions because you've been there, done that in terms of the job, but you can also not have the wool pulled over your eyes because you know as well. So that's kind of a win-win straight away. But also, if you've done the job, you ask the questions yourself. Why is this process done in this way when it could be done in that way and be much more effective and more efficient as well? So there's all those kind of things as well, isn't it? One of the things I used to do with one of the organizations I worked for, I used to work mainly for American multinationals before I went to Citizen Advice. So I was traveling around Europe a lot and looking at what process engineering in the finance departments. So looking at what they did in those finance departments, how they did it, ask the question why they did it, and then look at, you know, was there a better, more efficient way of doing that, which was really kind of useful, and I find it really fascinating and interesting. And it was about just looking at, you know, sometimes you, as you know, because Betty or Stan did this, that's the way it's done, until somebody comes along and says, why do you do that? Because it's redundant. That particular task is redundant now in the process, you know. So it's those kind of things which I find fascinating, and certainly as a musician, that's the kind of thing, you know, we're kind of looking at in trying to help musicians to promote themselves more effectively, and also self-belief and identity. You've touched on it as well, you know, that people who are securing themselves don't need a title. If they're securing who they are and they've got job satisfaction and they're remunerated at a level which, you know, they feel is fair or potentially even generous, you know, then generally people, you know, have a lot of loyalty, don't they, to the organization or to key individuals in that organization who treat them with respect and dignity, but also expect them to, you know, to work hard. That makes sense.
I think organisations could learn a lot from musicians, because and artists in general. Because I think one of the things that musicians, great musicians, have shown us over the years is just how complex, messy, difficult being a human is. And I think it's one of the things that, you know, going back to the whole conversation about job titles, etc. I think it's one of the things that we've struggled over the years with in business, is accepting, in trying to systemize everything, that that humans are awkward. You know, and we just want to try and make things as simple as possible. And I think one of the reasons we give people job titles is actually not, it's probably not even for people within the organization half the time. It's probably for other people outside of the organization to be able to go, oh, it's that person that does that, so that's the person I need to approach, and whatever. You know, it would make far more sense, would it not, actually, if everybody came with their kind of messy diagram or list of, like, I'm actually really good at this, and this. I'm really
I love that.
rubbish at this, and this.
So good. That's
Don't
so
get
good.
me to do those things. Get me to do these things. If you're putting together a team, let's have a look at the good list, the bad list, and let's put together the team based on, you know.
You know what? I love that, Graham. That's so good, because I suppose I've only coined the phrase recently, in probably the last couple of years, where I've thought to myself that some people see musicians as one-dimensional, and you've just encapsulated it there, because none of us are one-dimensional. So, for example, as soon as I say I'm a musician, some people will filter that through whatever that means to them, and it's like, well, you're a musician, that's it, you know, and don't know all the other skill sets, experiences, blah blah blah, like you've been talking about as well, Diane, in terms of the multifaceted, and so you just encapsulated it perfectly there, I think. Great. Really good. I like that.
I agree with you there, Vernon, and this is why we do the podcast, to showcase that we're more than just a recruitment business. You know, there's more behind the scenes to what we know, to what we understand, to what we think about, talk about, and you know, it's a great way to meet people like yourself and just have a really good conversation about life and organisations and what there is to offer. You know, because that's how you learn and grow. You know, we learn and grow off everyone we have on here, because everyone's always got something to offer in a different way to maybe look at things or understand. And it just, you know, you're totally right. No one's the same. And sometimes we be too, like, process driven, you know, to like, and you know, I am probably all for that, because coming from McDonald's, it's instilled me from the age of 17, you know, you do it this way, you do it that way. However, at the same time, I think I've always had that little bit of a creative side to flip things on its head, to say, well, why do we have to do it that way? Why can't you do it this way and stuff? And that goes back to that, you know, I know there's a lady off one of my networking groups who's done exactly what you said there, Graham, got her whole team. I went, right, you put all what you're good at, you put all what you want to do, and you do this, right? They're your jobs now, and they're your jobs, and then everyone's happy. No one's doing the task that they hate. So someone putting information on a computer day in, day out, someone would love that, someone else would hate it. So you might as well utilise your team to do the job, whether it's in their job description or not. It's like, do you like that? You do it. This is what I say, is like, I don't really care how it's done. Whoever wants to do it, just do it. I just that's it, isn't it? So let's all work together. That's completely right. Like,
I think half the problem in the world, though, is because of organisations like McDonald's. And I'm not saying that McDonald's are a bad organisation, right?
But I know where you're coming from.
I'm not gonna go there one way or the other, right? But what I'd say is that people look at organisations or massive institutions like McDonald's and go, well, they've just got it sussed, right? And you know, and they've got the money and they've got the team and everything else as well. But also, fundamentally, at the end of the day, what McDonald's do is pretty straightforward, right? It is. It's pretty straightforward. They sell fast food. They actually sell a fairly limited range of fast food, and they've, don't get me wrong, they've really honed that and they do it incredibly well. The trouble I think a lot of businesses have and people have these days is that their offering, who they are, what their organization does, is a lot more complex than that, right? It's not a case of, the amount of people that I talk to about social media or you know, even things like LinkedIn, and they go, well, I'm really not sure what I put in that up front on LinkedIn, because you know I'm a musician but I do mental health and I do this as well. What do I put up there, right? Yes. What do I say that I am? Because really I want like 10 profiles. Can I have 10 profiles, please? Because that would make more sense to me. And it's because, you know, if we all went, I sell burgers, it'd be easy, wouldn't it? It'd be absolutely easy. It'd be like, oh, right, they sell burgers. Do you want that? Do I like their burgers compared with their burgers? Well, then I'm going there. Simple. You know, I could literally taste test it and go, right, that's where I'm going. Most people, it's not like that. Most people's businesses aren't like that. Most people aren't like that. So I just go back to it being quite messy. And I think this is probably one of the things that you help people with, possibly sometimes even unknowingly, Diane, which is that actually them trying to work out who they need in their business in order to display a business and have the team and the people in their business to provide the right service and the right look and flavor is difficult, because actually what they do is difficult, and the people that they're talking to. The relationships are difficult and the conversations are difficult, and so it requires a lot of nuanced, intelligent discussion in order to get it right.
Yeah,
it's not flipping burgers.
It's a bit more complex. Yeah. We'll leave that conversation there, or we will not be friends, Graham.
It's interesting you say that, though. Yeah, sorry.
But the thing is that actually, Diane, what you learned from being in an organisation like that is incredibly helpful, because you can see how you need to try and bring it back to a process, try and bring it back to something simple so that people understand it and whatever.
Yeah, everybody's business needs the fundamentals of a process. You need a process that people know to follow, that's just what you do. You don't deviate it, because that's how you keep life simple and easy. We just do that process. However, in different organizations, different businesses, different, you also need creativity, and you need to be able to have, be able to go off from the lines and colour outside the lines. McDonald's is very regimental and very, process driven, but it has to be for it to work. That works for that business. However, on the flip of that, where it's very proactive and why it's successful and why it does well, is because it's always ahead of the game with well-being and, your training and development of what we learn, because although it is that process driven, it's a people business at the end of the day. They just happen to sell hamburgers. So if you don't put the heart into the minds of the business, you won't have a successful restaurant either way. So yeah, the fundamentals are very simple, but managing a store of 150 staff, 200 staff, whatever, it is quite difficult. You've got to have a bit of process and a bit of heart and all that type of stuff, and the training and development that they give you and all that stuff to do that. I underestimated how well that was, coming out into the business world 2 years ago to open DCT, made me realise how strong our business acumen is and what we actually learned and what we did do, so I would never think that. Or, and it's all very transferable, because everything's all about people. And I think that's why I've been able to fall into recruitment quite well, because, when you're on a store of 150 staff, trust me, your door never stop knocking. You know what I mean? There's always a problem. There's always something to listen to. There's always something you have to solve. You're always teaching people, coaching people, trying to get them to think for themselves. And, doing the same with, recruitment, I guess, you've got to ask the candidates the right question and pull out of it, what do they really want as a job? Well, why'd you keep moving roles? Why'd you leave? What's the reason? What are you unhappy with? And all that type of stuff. It all comes together really, and working backwards, like you say, with the clients, is trying to find that special ingredient of a person that's going to take the business to the next level is what's important. But you only do that by knowing the client inside out, having good relationships with them, speaking to them on a constant time, going visiting them and understanding their business. That's when you really can find the right people. One quick phone call isn't going to cut the mustard.
Well, I'm going to let Vernon finish for us today by kind of commenting on this. But, there's one thing that kind of music does show us again as well, doesn't it, Vernon, which is that actually, if you do anything that you do with absolute passion,
yes,
with absolute integrity and authenticness, if it's absolutely from the heart as well as the head, right, then actually, even though you might have 30,000 people all thinking or feeling something slightly different about what that means, right? If they're all singing it together back at you, you've sussed it. Right?
Wow. Yeah. Yes.
So,
good.
Music can do that. Music can take something which is complicated, which is messy, which is very human, and it can turn it into something which even though it means something different for everybody, it can unify everybody together with their different messages and bring it all home together.
Yeah, so good. I mean, like when I did that, I can't even remember what the jingle was now because it's made up on the spot. But things like DCT recruitment, you know, and just coming up with things like that. That, you know, obviously Diane has pride in her brand, in DCT recruitment. And I didn't know when I did that. The following day was celebrating an anniversary as well. So that was obviously fortuitous, serendipity, or whatever you might call it. But you're right, passion, you know, is passion coupled with integrity and trust are key. You know, I can sing ooby dooby dooby doo, and if I sing it with passion and authenticity, more people are going to buy into it than if I go ooby dooby dooby doo. Does that make sense? You know, so yeah, and having belief in yourself, and obviously, from what I don't know Diane very well at all. You know her better than myself, but I would suspect just from the little interaction that I've had with Diane that she makes people feel safe. She makes people feel like they can trust her pretty quickly, and that then they can open themselves up and answer those challenging questions that she will ask. Does that make sense? But those challenging questions you're asking with the whole motive of doing the best for that person and for the employer. Does that make sense? So on that basis, once people recognize and realize that, then the ulterior motives and, you know, what's your angle, all those kind of thoughts that go through people's heads begin to diminish and reduce, and they actually then engage with you at a more honest level, and you can actually find the real person, so you can get them the better opportunities, and you know that you're matching them with an employer that is going to help them to maximize their potential and also make the most for the business. I know I'm telling you what you know already, but that's just my observation from.
And it's really nice, Vernon. Thank you very much. It's nice to see that, and
I love that.
Short time. Yeah, because that's exactly what, you know, I want people to see, that we are very transparent, honest, and sometimes you have to have a bit of a challenging conversation, you know, to get to the right answer, you know, and you shouldn't be scared of that, you know. Either way, you know, you've got to have that challenging conversation to clients sometimes and say, look, you know, you think you need X, Y, and Z, but that keeps failing on you because of this. You know, why don't you just try this person? You know, if I always sometimes look at my own journey, and, you know, I got given an opportunity to work in recruitment, no experience, no nothing. If I'm totally honest, I didn't even know what recruitment was. I've been in McDonald's for 22 years. I knew burgers, chips and pop. That's it. You know what I mean? That's it. But not that's it. But, you know, so I like, you know, and I went into the business and I changed it around. I helped it. I made it grow. And, you know, I'm now fortunate to have my own business in it because I learned that. So sometimes they might not have that exact skill set on the CV, but because we will ring every person who's applied to the degree in most jobs, you know, not certain jobs, but, you know, your higher end jobs. So if you ring everyone and ask why have you applied, you know, that doesn't really marry up on your CV. They'd be like, some people either just don't update the CV or say, well, you know what, I've done this here and I think that's that and that. And that can be that golden egg, you know, that can be that diamond in the rough of that person because you've picked the phone up and spoke to them. You know, there's a reason probably somebody's applied. Don't get me wrong, you'd have all people from all over the world trying to apply and get sponsorship, all that type of stuff as well. But there's certain people you think, why have they applied? And just by having that conversation, then that's where you do definitely find that person. That's what, and, you know, you just give the client the opportunity and say, look, just interview them and see what you think. You know, you never know what's going to do. And you're right, that's where you do find that right person. Thank you for that.
Thank you. No, you're welcome.
And that's where we'll leave it today. But thank you, Vernon, for joining us today. Thanks for such a great conversation. Hope you've enjoyed that. I'm now thinking that we probably need to get Vernon to do his song and tape it well, that's very old-fashioned. Record it so that we can use it within the podcast. I'll have to talk to him about that and see whether we can arrange something.
That'll be a nice challenge for me to take up and respond to. Yeah, I look forward to that.
Absolutely. Hope you've enjoyed this conversation today, everybody, and we look forward to bringing you more of these conversations soon. Until next time, thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.